Добрий день, я вітаю.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us here in Ukrainian Media Center Ukrinform. Today is day 435 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor, and today we will be talking about the operation of our power grid. And joining us in this studio is Oleksandr Kharchenko, director at the Energy Industry Research Center. Good afternoon, Mr. Oleksandr. Please switch on your microphone. Mr. Oleksandr, we know that the bombardments don't cease by the occupiers, and the latest ones resulted in damage of our power grid in the east of our country. So what is the situation for the time being? Now it's mostly distribution networks which are being attacked, and that's why the shelling did not result in some big scale shutdown. The situation in Kherson region is complicated in general, and resumption of normal operation of the power grid in that region, well, it would take years to fix everything. So part of the distribution nodes were damaged. There were shutdowns in a number of regions. People did not have access to the electric power for a long time, but the reconstruction is going on quite quicker than in the case of main way networks, because the equipment is available for the distribution networks. The details are closer, and there is certain reserve. The parts are closer, and there is certain reserve of them. But talking about the nationwide scale, there was no serious damage of the generating capacities and high voltage networks. Well, it's a good news, but talking about the reconstruction of the grid in general, we understand that the works which were going on a situational ad hoc basis where the grid was damaged, they don't, however, solve the problem on a global level. So what is the condition of the reconstruction of all of our grid? Well, I would divide it into two parts. First is preparation to the heating season and what can be done within that time, and another part is what to do in the horizon of 2 to 5 years. So talking about the preparation to the heating season and what should we expect, I have a couple of bad news, because I'm sure that without significant effort we will not avoid shutdowns in the second half of August, for example. And unfortunately, during the flooding, the repair works on the nuclear power plants, well, the flooding is about to subside. So when Ukrinform could use the large amounts of water to provide the Ukrainians with the power generated from the water from the hydraulic power plants. During that time, the nuclear power reactors were not decommissioned for repairing, so it will result in a deficit of electric power, which can be covered by import, which is available for us like 1 gigawatt of capacity. We will be forced to use it in full, and the prices will be quite sad because the power will be quite expensive. And our preliminary calculations show that it may not cover in full our needs, and we will have to launch the power blocks which operate on gas. So this is why we will have to burn gas, which is another serious problem, because the accumulation of gas for heating season becomes more difficult in that case, because the estimated additional volumes for summer peak and heating season amounts to 2 billion cubic meters of gas, which should be bought somewhere and transported to Ukraine, because our mining will not cover these needs. So this is the short-term perspective. High voltage networks are being reconstructed, and I'm sure they will be in good condition before the heating season. The works are very active in that area. Well, everything is not perfect, but the works are in progress. And another thing is, what should we do within the next 2, 3 or 5 years? We should focus on local generation in the key big cities even before this heating season, and until the next one there will be season 23-24, and then 24-25 will come unexpectedly. So we should ensure uninterrupted supply for big cities. It's absolutely crucial thing to cover the needs of the critical infrastructure, heating and water supply. That's a big area, and there's a lot of things to be done, but we can cover the biggest cities of Ukraine within the next 2 years. And yet another area is the so-called green transition, when we say let's refuse coal generation and let's develop the alternative power sources. So now in this case we need additional gas capacities, because gas capacities are maneuverable in terms of these opportunity windows. When wind subsides, when the sun hides behind the clouds, there's something that picks up and continues to supply electric power to the consumer. So it's only gas generation which can provide such maneuvers. And we, according to our system operator, we need about 1.5 gigawatts of this capacity. So if the state focuses on that, given the reformation of the energy market and fixing its financial component, everything will be done by the private capital. I mean biogas, everything will be built, but given only one small condition, that the energy market will be reformed in full, and one may invest in the energy market in a way that they know their money would be coming back. Okay, so talking about our nuclear power plants, what is their condition? And I cannot help but asking about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. There was information that there were explosives located in one of the power blocks. What do you know about that? Well, the explosives are located in the turbine halls. There was information in public space that the Russians located explosives and weapons in the turbine hall of the 4th power block. Well, I apologize, but they were located in all of the blocks, in all of the turbine halls. They just hide their equipment from attacks of our military. They hide their ammunition in this way. So unfortunately, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant for the time being is a safe storage of weapons, explosives and ammunition for Russian army. This is an absolutely savage thing from the point of view of any energy technician. It's an incredible hazard in terms of what's going on in this power plant, but what we can only expect is for our military to liberate that power plant. I don't see any other chances to improve the situation there. As to the other power plants, they operate in a normal mode, but again, unfortunately, we lost this opportunity for the repair companies during the flooding, and in summer it will be more painful to the consumer. So talking about liberation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, how will it compensate the deficit? How can we compensate the deficit, and how long will we resume the normal operation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant? Well, it's unpredictable. We've seen how it happened in Kherson region when the Russian terrorists withdraw. They try to destroy everything they can. I hope they will not be trying to destroy the reactors, but there is a hypothesis that they will try to destroy all other equipment, something that will not directly result in the emergencies such as explosion of the reactor itself. So they will destroy all the auxiliary equipment, and it will take months and months to resume the normal operation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And we have to get prepared now already, because there will be a number of quick steps to be taken to ensure the security of the power plant, like demining, reconstruction, and we understand that they will probably destroy everything they can. For the time being, we know that we do not import the electric power, but rather we export it. So how much do we export? And if we expect the deficit to increase in summer, and we will be in need to engage the import, will it influence the price for the final consumer? Well, the export is going on thanks to the operation of the nuclear generation and the flooding, which is going on for the last couple of weeks. Well, what will be happening? We will reach deficit depending on the schedule of the repair of the nuclear power plant, but we will reach it sooner or later for sure. How it will reflect on the final consumer? Well, I don't see any steps to be taken so that something happens with the private consumer. The government doesn't think about some crucial reforms, no matter how urgent it is. It's absolutely urgent. In a situation as we are now, we cannot reconstruct the power grid. But I see no steps to be taken in that direction, so I think that the price will be preserved for the private consumers. But for industrial consumers, I think there will be some changes. I cannot forecast what will be the scenario, but I'm sure that the prices will be increased for the industrial consumers, and if they import, they will get a significant increase in price, or otherwise we will have to let go of the Ukrainian prices and they will again grow for the industrial consumer, and the industrial consumers will just continue compensating low tariffs for the population. It doesn't work otherwise. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions on the floor, please go ahead. Good afternoon, Yana Koloda, Ukrinform. In your opinion, under which conditions and when Ukraine will be able to resume the export of electric power to Slovakia? Well, in some small amounts it may happen shortly. It depends on the state regulator. It's in their hands. The systemic resolution on the export mostly depends on the regulator and the parliament, because it requires regulatory and legislative changes. So it's two options. First is to resume work with Slovakia. It may happen in days. And the systemic resolution on the export import and the problem of intergovernment bids for border cross, which is being discussed very vividly now, it's more in the hands of the parliament. They have to amend two laws, and it can be, there is no big discussion about it. Everybody understands what's going on, so it may be done shortly as well, and Ukraine may become a part of the standard European procedure, which is called JAO, and we may start working with this within those JAO bids. But strategically, I think that we will resume operations in normal export business when Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be back in operation. This is when Ukraine will be able to export some significant amounts of electric power. Thank you. You already mentioned about the explosives in nuclear power plant. The parliament urged the foreign governments to impose sanctions on Rosatom. Do you think these events may influence on imposition of such sanctions against nuclear sector of Russian Federation? Well, look, most of our partners, save for specific countries of Europe, they support the idea of sanctions for Rosatom. Unfortunately, it's not a situation where you may bristle a weapon and everything becomes good, because Rosatom is very deeply built in the world system of nuclear security. They use dumping on the market, and they took some positions in American and French markets where even local manufacturers were forced to shut down the manufacturing of some types of nuclear fuel, processing of that fuel, because Rosatom was doing it very cheaply. It was cheaper to work through Rosatom, but to resume the operation of those foreign enterprises, it may take years. So Rosatom sanctions will not be in a blink of an eye. They will be gradual. There is discussion in this area. The work is going on in this area. The only bad thing is that Ukraine is not a leader in this discussion, not even a driver of this process. Because Ukraine generates nothing but statements. Meanwhile, we should generate content, how to replace Rosatom in this or that area, how to remove Rosatom from the market of fuel, and Ukraine has a wonderful perspective in this view. For example, Ukraine may manufacture components for Westinghouse fuel, and we may propose Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and other countries, for example Sweden, which has a Westinghouse manufacturing facility. So Ukraine may propose to replace that fuel, but it requires a team and a daily work which may bring some good results within 3 to 12 months. So I don't observe any such work for the time being. Thank you very much for this information. Thank you for this broadcast. I'm reminded you joining us was Oleksandr Kharchenko, and our next event is at 1400. We will have panel discussion during which we will consider the effects of the war on biospheric reserves. So bear with us, trust in our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.